The cold metal of the restraints bit into Briggs' wrists, but he ignored the discomfort. Pain was just information, and right now, he had more important things to focus on. The transport ship vibrated with the steady hum of its engines, cutting through the void toward an Imperial warship. The two Xel'Dar guards flanking him barely paid attention, their weapons held lazily at their sides. To them, he was just another captured primitive, an insignificant piece of the rebellion. They had no idea what they had in their custody. The ship lurched as it docked, the hiss of pressurized air filling the cabin. A mechanical voice droned over the intercom in a language Briggs didn't recognize, but the intent was clear. Arrival. The guard straightened, gripping his arms and hauling him forward. He didn't resist. Not yet. They led him through metallic corridors lined with pulsing blue lights, past towering doors that sealed off parts of the warship. The air smelled sterile, artificial, recycled too many times over. Every detail, every layout of the ship, he memorized. Exit points, blind spots, security patterns. He might be unarmed now, but that wouldn't last. A set of doors slid open, revealing a darkened chamber. At its center, a raised platform held an angular interrogation chair, restraints gleaming under the dim overhead glow. A single figure stood beside it, clad in deep crimson armor, his elongated face betraying a mix of confidence and boredom. Overseer Xel'Dar. Sit. The order was clipped, impatient. Briggs met the alien's gaze but said nothing. A hard shove from behind forced him onto the chair, restraints snapping shut over his arms and legs. The moment they locked, a low hum vibrated through the metal, some kind of suppression field. Xel'Dar stepped forward, eyes narrowing. You have caused inconvenience. Briggs tilted his head slightly. Good. The overseer's mandibles twitched, a flicker of irritation breaking through his otherwise measured expression. I know your kind. Fragile. Short-lived. Yet you resist beyond reason. His clawed hand gestured, and a nearby console flickered to life. That resistance is pointless. Briggs let the words wash over him, expression blank. He had been trained for this. The Empire thought torture was a weapon. It wasn't. It was just another battlefield. Xel'Dar activated a sequence, and a searing pulse shot through the chair. Pain lanced through Briggs' spine, sharp and precise, but he didn't flinch. He wouldn't give them that. The overseer watched him, waiting for a reaction. When none came, his posture shifted slightly. He wasn't used to this. Briggs exhaled slowly. That all you got? The overseer's eyes darkened. Another pulse. Stronger. His muscles locked, pain spreading through every nerve, but his expression remained impassive. The only sound in the room was the hum of the machinery. Silence. Xel'Dar leaned closer. Tell me about the resistance. Briggs blinked, slow and deliberate. No. A long pause. Then a chuckle. The overseer straightened, clasping his hands behind his back. You think this is a test of endurance? Your species is stubborn, but biological limits exist. He gestured toward the console again. The pulses would continue. Days, weeks if necessary. The Empire had time. Briggs closed his eyes for a brief moment. Time. That was the one thing he needed. Because this wasn't about surviving the pain. It was about learning everything he could before he made his move. The overseer turned to leave, satisfied that the process was beginning. The guards remained, weapons at the ready. Briggs tested the restraints subtly, feeling the slight give where the mechanism latched. Imperfect design. A flaw. He could work with that. Briggs focused on his breathing, slow and measured. Pain wasn't the enemy. The real enemy was time. The Empire assumed they had control of it, stretching this out, waiting for him to break. They didn't realize he wasn't planning to endure, he was planning to escape. The guards were restless. He could hear it in their shifting stances, in the way their grips tightened on their weapons whenever he exhaled too slowly. Fear. Not of him, but of failure. The Xel'Dar had no patience for incompetence. That was something he could use. A new figure entered, his armor dark with iridescent streaks along the plating. Higher rank. Probably a specialist in breaking prisoners. The alien studied Briggs for a moment before speaking. You are human. Briggs didn't respond. A species of endurance, of stubborn defiance. This is why you fight. The alien tilted its head. It is fascinating. He stepped closer, pressing something against Briggs' temple, a cold, metallic device that pulsed against his skin. A neural probe. He had seen what those could do. They didn't rip thoughts from the mind, not exactly. They pressured, pushed, manipulated. But they relied on weaknesses, on doubt. Briggs had neither. "You will answer," the alien said, activating the probe. A sharp pulse surged through his skull, drilling deep, seeking cracks in his mental defenses. Briggs clenched his jaw but didn't resist. Instead, he redirected. Thought control was a game. Give the probe something to latch onto. Misdirection. He focused on useless memories, childhood streets, meaningless training drills, the smell of coffee in a barracks long gone. The probe hesitated, flickering. The alien frowned. "Strange," it murmured. "Your thoughts are structured." Briggs forced himself to think of something irrelevant. Football. The way rain smelled on concrete. He could feel the probe digging, searching for military secrets, for strategy. It found nothing. The specialist pulled back, frustrated. Impressive, but unnecessary. "You know how this ends?" Briggs blinked, slow and deliberate. "Yeah, I do." That slight shift in his tone made the alien pause. There was something unnerving about certainty, about a prisoner who wasn't afraid. The Xel'Dar thrived on breaking weaker minds, but they had no understanding of human warfare. Of what a sniper did. Briggs wasn't reacting because he wasn't captured. He was simply in the middle of a plan. The overseer entered again, his mandibles twitching. The specialist stepped back, shaking his head. "He resists." Xel'Dar exhaled sharply. "Then he is useless." A decision was made in that moment. The guard straightened, awaiting orders. "Execute him," the overseer said. "At dawn." Briggs closed his eyes. Not in defeat. In calculation. That was their mistake. They thought they had control of time. They didn't realize time had just run out. The order for execution was given, but Briggs had no intention of complying. The Xel'Dar were overly confident in their methods, relying on brute force and intimidation, but they had underestimated him. He wasn't the average soldier they had fought before. He was a sniper, trained to think and act with precision, to move with purpose and patience. He knew this ship inside and out now, every turn, every flicker of the lights, every change in the guards' patrols. They had sealed his wrists, but they hadn't sealed his mind. As the lights dimmed and the guards left for their scheduled rotations, Briggs' focus narrowed. The pain from the earlier interrogation still throbbed, but he pushed it aside, concentrating on the faint vibrations under his feet, the subtle shifts in the air currents. The ship was massive, but it was still a machine. Machines had patterns. He flexed his hands, testing the restraints again. The exact position of the locks was a few inches off. The design was sloppy, rushed. They had underestimated his ability to notice the small things. A tug. A twist. A barely perceptible shift of his wrist. Briggs wasn't going anywhere yet, but he could feel the restraints weakening. That was enough for now. The guards came by once more, their voices muffled in the distance. Briggs timed it. As their footfalls grew closer, he stilled his breathing and became just another piece of the environment, his body a silent part of the cold metal room. They walked by without a second glance. They never expected him to escape. The ship's walls were lined with tight security, laser grids, automatic turrets, and alien sensors. Briggs didn't need to fight them all. He just needed to outsmart them. Using his memory of the ship's layout, he tracked down the blind spots in the security feeds, exploiting every single flaw. The trick was to move quickly, silently, and always stay one step ahead. They might have his body, but they didn't have his mind. Briggs slipped out of the chair, the restraints falling away as his calculated pressure finally forced the latch to give. The soft thud of metal on metal was drowned out by the low hum of the ship systems. He was free. Now, he just had to stay that way. He moved through the corridors, a shadow among shadows. He knew where the guards would be and where they wouldn't. Every time a door opened, he was already gone. Every time the ship sensors scanned the area, they were just fractions of a second behind. He wasn't being hunted. He was hunting. A guard passed in front of him, unaware. Briggs didn't hesitate. A swift strike to the neck, and the alien crumpled to the floor, its body limp before it hit the ground. Briggs grabbed the weapon, adjusting it to his grip. He knew how to use anything, but now he needed his own rifle. Moving faster now, he headed for the armory. He could hear the distant hum of the door security system, the subtle click of its locks disengaging for anyone with the right access code. Not that it mattered. He wasn't here to be subtle anymore. He wasn't trying to escape unnoticed. He was making his mark. The moment he reached the armory, Briggs found what he was looking for, a standard-issue blaster rifle. Not the sniper rifle he was used to, but it would work for now. His hands were steady as he slung it across his back. He was armed. And with that, the game had changed. Briggs moved through the halls like a predator in its element, each step calculated, each movement precise. His training as a sniper had taught him not just to be deadly from a distance, but to navigate the world with the quiet confidence of someone who was always in control. Now, the Xel'Dar would learn the hard way that underestimating a human soldier was a fatal mistake. He reached the main control room, where the heart of the ship's security systems pulsed like a beating heart. The technicians inside were focused on their screens, unaware of the impending danger. Briggs paused for a moment, analyzing. He didn't need to kill them all. Just a few well-placed shots. The lights flickered, and Briggs struck. The room erupted into chaos, the technicians scrambling for their weapons as he swept across the room with lethal efficiency. He didn't waste bullets. One shot to disable the main controls, another to keep the remaining soldiers at bay. Within minutes, the room was his. Now, the ship would never be the same. Briggs wasn't just escaping. He was sending a message. The Empire had made their move. But he wasn't just another soldier. He was a force of nature, a human sniper, one who had never been meant to survive in their world. But now, he was the one in control. Briggs stepped over the bodies, heading for the nearest exit. The ship's alarms had already started blaring. He had no time to waste. The Empire would never know what hit them. Briggs moved quickly, his pulse steady as the blaring alarms echoed through the ship. The Empire's war machine had already started reacting, but by now, he was too deep within their system for them to stop him. The chaos had spread through the corridors, and he could hear the scrambling of the Xel'Dar forces as they tried to figure out what was happening. They were disorganized, panicked, exactly what he wanted. The blaster rifle was now an extension of his arm, its weight comforting as he moved through the ship. His mind raced with calculations, running through contingencies and possibilities. The ship wasn't going to fall apart immediately, but it was on the edge. A few more strategic strikes, and the Empire would find itself in a crippled state, vulnerable. The Resistance had only one chance to hit back hard, and Briggs was the key to making that happen. He had already mapped out his route to the central hangar. Getting there was crucial. Once there, he would have access to the ships, transport ships, fighter craft, whatever he needed to escape. They wouldn't expect him to be able to pilot one, but he could. It was part of the training. Adapt. Survive. Overwhelm the enemy. The halls were lined with alien soldiers now, more alert than before, trying to seal off sections and regain control. But Briggs wasn't concerned with them. They were predictable. He was on their radar, but in their eyes, he was still just a prisoner, a captured human. They didn't understand the truth, that he wasn't just a threat. He was a nightmare. He took out another pair of guards, moving swiftly in the shadows, silent as a shadow itself. They never had a chance. Their weapons were already on the ground, useless before they even knew he was there. He checked their comms, listening in on the scrambling orders. They were calling for reinforcements, units that were still far from where he needed them to be. Perfect. The hangar was close now. He could feel the pulse of the ship, the vibrations of its engines as they powered up for their next phase of operation. The Empire's schedule had already been disrupted, but they were trying to compensate. They wouldn't be able to. Not with him in the system. As he neared the hangar doors, a small squad of soldiers appeared, rushing toward him. Their blasters were drawn, but they hesitated. They weren't sure who he was, not yet. Briggs gave them no time to react. He dropped one with a quick shot to the chest, then ducked into a side corridor as the remaining soldiers returned fire. He could hear them shouting, their voices panicked. They were closing in on him, but he was already moving, already planning his next strike. The ship's security was starting to lock down on his position, but he had anticipated that. They were playing catch-up, and they had no idea what was about to hit them. Briggs reached the hangar, the doors sliding open with a low hiss. The space was vast, filled with ships and cargo bays. A few alien technicians looked up, startled, but by the time they processed what was happening, they were already down, incapacitated with well-placed shots. He didn't need them alerting anyone. He moved through the hangar, searching for a ship that would get him off this ship. The Xel'Dar had fighter crafts, smaller vessels that could be piloted in case of emergencies, but Briggs wasn't interested in escaping alone. He needed something bigger, something that could carry him and the resistance fighters who would soon be on their way. His eyes landed on a transport ship, large enough to carry a full platoon. It was still docked, the doors wide open as maintenance workers ran around. He moved toward it, grabbing a nearby tool to disable the security locks. The ship's engines were already powering up, a sign that they planned to launch soon. But that didn't matter. He reached the control deck, his fingers flying across the panels as he hacked into the system. The transport ship systems came online, and he began the countdown. He didn't need to check for enemies. The hangar was already a battlefield. His mind was clear, focused. There was no hesitation. Only the next step. The countdown finished. The engines roared to life, and the ship began to lift off, its massive body cutting through the air with ease. The Xel'Dar had lost control, but Briggs was just getting started. As the transport broke through the hangar doors, Briggs knew one thing for certain: the Empire had underestimated him. They had thought a human soldier would be easy to capture, easy to break. But Briggs wasn't just a soldier. He was a sniper. And every shot he took, every move he made, was calculated with a precision they would never understand. The war had just begun.